I refused to change my wedding date for my sister's vacation and my family abandoned me. Now they're shocked I skipped her wedding too.
Part 3.
Then Aunt Linda finally snapped, "You're embarrassing yourselves. You made your choices. Now deal with them." That's when my dad stepped in. Not publicly, of course. No. He sent me a quiet half-hearted message. "I regret how things turned out." That was it. No real apology. No standing up to my mom or Ava. Just another useless regret with zero action behind it. Then Ava found out about the honeymoon. Apparently, she had assumed we were still at home, probably dealing with wedding cleanup or whatever else she thought we'd be doing. But when she realized we were already on a plane, sipping drinks on a beach without telling anyone, that set her off. The group chat blew up again. She was ranting about how, "Wow. Guess we really mean nothing to you, and you couldn't even tell your own family where you were going." That was it for me. I sent one final message. "You all made your choices. I made mine. Enjoy your week." Then I muted the chat. Coming back home after the honeymoon was like stepping into another world. While Emma and I had spent 2 weeks sipping cocktails on the beach, my family had spent that time spiraling. The second we landed and turned our phones back on, the notifications started rolling in. The first sign of trouble was my mom's Facebook meltdown. She had posted a long emotional rant about how she never imagined her own child would turn their back on family and how some people let outsiders ruin what should have been unbreakable bonds. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew the situation could tell exactly who she was talking about. The comments were filled with distant relatives chiming in. Some agreeing, others clearly uncomfortable, but trying to stay neutral. Ava wasn't far behind. She followed up with a sad selfie, captioned, "Some bonds aren't as strong as you think." Again, no names, no direct callouts, but the message was obvious. She wanted sympathy, and of course, she got it. Her friends and a few family members flooded the comments with heart emojis and messages about how she deserved better. Then came the family division. A cousin reached out, letting me know that some relatives thought my parents and Ava were being unreasonable, while others simply wished things had played out differently. It wasn't an all-out war, but it was clear some people preferred avoiding conflict over acknowledging who was in the wrong. Apparently, to some people, avoiding conflict was more important than the actual wedding itself. Then my dad showed up. I hadn't heard much from him since the wedding, aside from his usual neutral regrets. Seeing him outside our house felt out of place. He wasn't the kind of man to take decisive action. But here he was, as if suddenly realizing the damage had gone too far. He wanted to talk. Inside, he hesitated. Clearly uncomfortable. Eventually, he admitted that he hadn't agreed with what my mom and Ava had done, but he felt pressured to stay quiet. He talked about how they had been furious in the weeks leading up to the wedding, how they had made it clear that if he tried to push back, there would be consequences for him too. Emma sat quietly, listening, but I could already tell she wasn't buying it, and neither was I. At this point, it was clear that my dad knew what was happening was wrong, but he had done nothing to stop it. Now, after everything had blown up, he wanted to play the helpless middleman. Emma didn't hold back. She reminded him that he let it happen. He stood by and watched while my mom and Ava spread lies, guilt-tripped family members, and boycotted their own son's wedding over something completely ridiculous. That's when I made my demand. If he really supported me, if he really regretted how things had played out, then he needed to say it out loud publicly and to my mother and Ava, not in some quiet private conversation, not in a whisper that no one else would hear. He needed to stand up for me instead of just texting empty apologies. And just like that, he backed down. He mumbled something about how it's complicated and how he didn't want to make things worse. In other words, he was too afraid to take a stand. He was more comfortable being in the background watching it all happen than actually speaking up. That was all I needed to hear. After he left, Ava made her last move. She sent me a long text, completely unhinged, about how I was selfish and how I had ruined the family's unity. She went on and on about how I had humiliated her and how this is why no one respects you anymore. That was it. I was done. I blocked her. No more texts. No more passive-aggressive social media posts. No more of her nonsense. Gone. Not long after, Mark reached out. His message was simple. "I should have done more. I'm sorry." He didn't excuse his silence, didn't try to justify it, just admitted he had failed to support me when he should have. At this point, I knew that some family members would never change. My mom and Ava were still completely convinced they had done nothing wrong. My dad was too much of a coward to challenge them. But, Mark, he was starting to see it. Maybe not enough to stand up to them completely, but enough to realize he had been wrong. And that was enough for me to know that Emma and I were moving forward without them. Months passed. After the wedding chaos, the social media meltdowns, and the failed guilt tripping, I assumed my family had finally accepted reality. I had moved on. Emma and I were happy, living our lives without the constant drama. Then, out of nowhere, the messages started. My mom sent a casual just checking in text. But when I didn't immediately respond, she escalated, reminding me that Ava's wedding was coming up, acting like I was the one who had to make amends despite everything they had done. Ava, who had been radio silent since I blocked her, suddenly unblocked me on social media. She didn't message, but she started liking old pictures, ones from years ago before everything fell apart. Emma noticed immediately. She didn't even need to ask. "They want something," she said. And of course, she was right. A few days later, one of my cousins let it slip. Ava was getting married. That was the real reason for the sudden friendliness. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She wasn't trying to fix things. She wanted me at her wedding. Then the invitation arrived. It wasn't personal. No message, no apology, just a standard wedding invitation addressed to me and Emma. Emma looked at it, then back at me. So does she expect us to just pretend nothing happened? Apparently, that was exactly what they expected. My mom's texts became overly sweet. Suddenly, she was all about family sticking together and fresh starts. She conveniently avoided every part of the wedding drama, acting like this was just another normal family event. Then Mark called. He wasn't dramatic about it, but the message was clear. They expected me to make things right by showing up. According to him, Ava and my mom believed that this was the perfect opportunity for us to move past everything. Ava must have felt the pressure to actually acknowledge me because she finally messaged me directly. For the first time in months, she reached out, and, of course, it wasn't an apology. It was her playing the bigger person. She told me she was willing to forgive me if I showed up. That was all I needed to see. I sent one simple response. "I thought you didn't care about inconvenient wedding dates," then I declined the invitation. Mom immediately started calling. I ignored the first few, then she left a voicemail full of the same guilt-tripping nonsense as before. I was tearing the family apart. I was being petty. I was hurting Ava on the most important day of her life. I didn't respond. Days later, I started hearing from relatives. Word had spread. Ava was furious. She was telling people that I was immature and bitter for skipping her wedding. Apparently, she was shocked that I would hold a grudge over something so small. Emma just laughed when she heard that. Then she had a brilliant idea. "Let's book a trip that weekend," and we did. A luxury resort. The works. We made sure to let a few cousins know, not in a petty way, just casually in conversation. The news reached Ava. That was when the calls and messages stopped. Ava and my mom must have realized that nothing they said was going to change my mind. No more fake nice texts. No more desperate attempts to manipulate me into going. Then my dad reached out. A simple message. "I regret how things turned out." Same thing as before. The same useless regrets without any real action. I didn't respond. At that point, I had all the closure I needed. Ava's wedding came and went, and I didn't hear a word about it. No last minute, please. No final guilt trips. It was like they had finally accepted that I wasn't going to budge. Emma and I spent the weekend on a beach, completely unbothered, and that was the moment I realized we were finally free. Ava's wedding week arrived, and Emma and I couldn't have been more relaxed. We treated the weekend like any other, carefree and completely unbothered by the family drama that had consumed the last few months. Ava had done her best to manipulate the situation, but we had moved on. The weekend of the wedding came and went, and we spent it in total peace. We didn't get caught up in the stress of it all. I didn't even check my phone for any messages from my family, but it didn't take long for the fallout to hit. One of my cousins called me up, barely able to contain his laughter. Apparently, Ava had been spinning the missing brother narrative to the rest of the family. She was telling anyone who would listen that I had refused to support my own sister on her big day. My absence was somehow painted as the biggest betrayal, and she made it sound like I was the one ruining the family. It wasn't just Ava. A few days later, I opened my Facebook to see my mother's post. It was one of those vague dramatic statuses, clearly directed at me. She lamented how some people just can't put the past behind them and how family should come before petty grudges. It was a classic move, trying to guilt-trip me into submission. Mark texted me a last-minute plea, saying he wished things had been different and hoped I would reconsider attending Ava's wedding. For once, he acknowledged that our family had handled things poorly, but even then, he stopped short of calling out their behavior directly. Emma, ever the voice of reason, reminded me that none of them cared about my wedding. None of them respected my boundaries or supported me through the mess with Ava. She was right. I owed them nothing. Just when I thought things might calm down, Ava sent me a text playing at being the bigger person. She said, "It would mean a lot if you came, but I understand if you're still holding a grudge." It was a fake olive branch, but I saw right through it. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I shot back. "You weren't willing to change your plans for my wedding, but I should drop everything for yours." That didn't go over well. She flipped immediately. Within minutes, she accused me of being petty and obsessed with the past. I wasn't surprised. It was the same old Ava, always trying to flip the script when things didn't go her way. My mom wasn't done either. A few hours later, she called, sounding tearful and desperate. She claimed the family was falling apart because of me. How, if I didn't make things right, things would never be the same. I wasn't buying it. I had heard this manipulation too many times. I told her bluntly, "Ava and the rest of you made your choices, and now I'm making mine." That was the last time I answered her calls. As for the wedding itself, I heard bits and pieces from the extended family. There was minor gossip about tension during the event, How Ava kept mentioning my absence, and how unfair it was. But, honestly, I didn't care. Ava had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Then came Mark's message. It was a few days later after the wedding had wrapped up. He told me the wedding had been a disaster because of all the drama. The tension was palpable, and people were whispering behind the scenes about how everything had been ruined by family feuds. But Ava had a final petty move. She posted an Instagram update, just as I expected. The caption was all about being grateful for the real family who showed up and how she was cutting out toxic people from her life. The irony was lost on no one.